friends, Chubby Meeple back with another Kickstarter preview for you. Today we're taking a look at Infamous. This is from designer Hassan Lopez, featuring art by the incredibly talented Rob Guillory, and this will be published by Eagle-Gryphon Games on Kickstarter, now seeking funding. Just jump over to the table, I'll give you a brief overview of how the game plays, and then we'll jump back here and I'll tell you my thoughts. A game of Infamous is played over 3 rounds, and those rounds are broken into a few phases. There is a base building phase, there is an attraction and recruitment phase of your henchmen. You then go on a contract phase where you're going across the world and trying to fulfill contracts and complete your evil deeds across the world. And then finally there's a cleanup phase. So in the game itself, each player is going to take on the role of a villain. Essentially. So in this case, we've got a 3-player game set up here. We have Empress Ishii, we've got Gorgon X, and we have Dr. Hamadid. And you can see on here there are some strengths and some weaknesses. So there's an advanced variant of the game you can play where you can play with either all of the supervillain strengths, you can play with all of the weaknesses, you can play with strengths and weaknesses, and you can also use this to handicap players. So if you've got more advanced players, maybe they play with their weaknesses, only their weakness, and the other players that are newer to the game play with their strengths. So, and there's some information on the card as well as far as time costs for traveling to different regions, and we'll talk about that in a second. Each of those villains also is going to have their own lackey. So we see Ninja Girl here, who is the lackey for Empress Ishii. We have Basilisk, who is the lackey for Gorgon X. And then we have Mr. Jones, who is the lackey for Dr. Hamadid. So when you select your villain, you'll also have a lackey that you will start the game with, and they're basically going to act as one of your henchmen. To start the game, what's going to happen first phase is base building. You're going to deal 5 of these secret base room cards to each player. So every player is going to take 5 of these cards. And there's a little bit of a drafting phase that happens here. So you take a look at the cards that are in your hand. You're going to choose one of these rooms to add to your base, your secret base, and then you're going to pass the cards that you don't select. In this case, 4 cards are going to get passed over to the player to your left. In round 2, things are going to get passed to your right. Round 3, they go back to your left. So much that the typical drafting where the directions change. Now these rooms are going to be important for a few reasons. First of all, they're going to allow you to climb the attraction tracks for the 4 different types of henchmen. So if I were to take the tattoo parlor and add this to my base, not only does it give me an ability that I can activate later in the game, it also lets me climb up the attraction track, which is this track at the top of the board. There are 4 different types of henchmen. You've got beasts, criminals, scientists, and mystics or magical henchmen that you're trying to recruit. This would let me climb up the beast track up to 2. If I were to take this particular room, the Office of Bioterrorism, I would climb up the science track by 4 spaces. And that becomes important in the second phase of the game, the recruitment and attraction phase. So basically what's going to happen is if I take one of these rooms, and we'll just say that we take the Doomsday device here. We take the Doomsday device, I pay $5, and everybody starts with a certain amount of money based on player order. So I pay $5, I place this room face up on the table near my villain to start building my base, and I will climb up my player marker 1 space for this particular card, 1 space for each criminal type. So let's say I'm the yellow player here. I would simply move the yellow marker up 1 space on each of these tracks. So we move up 1 on the beast, we move up 1 on the criminal, we move up 1 on science, and we move up 1 on the mystic track. And that becomes important for recruiting heroes or recruiting henchmen later on. So I would recruit that. I would pass these 4 cards to the player to my left, and I would accept 4 more cards from the player to my right. I would get 4 more cards. And so, and it's going to proceed like that until everyone has built 3 rooms. Once everyone has built 3 rooms, the remaining cards get discarded. You also have the option, one thing I should mention, you also do have the option of selling a room. If you don't want to pay the cost of the room, I could sell this map room back and simply discard it and gain $2. So I can sell these room plans back to the discard, gaining some extra cash that I can use in future rounds. What's going to happen after that? Once everyone's built their bases, we move on to the attraction and the recruitment phase. So as I mentioned, we go through the bases and we're building up scores. And what's going to happen is everyone's colors are going to end up in different areas on these tracks. So you may have a situation where once everyone has done their recruitment and done their base building, things kind of look like this. Now, obviously, I just threw that out there. and set it up that way so that you can see the tracks here. So we have your attraction score, and there, like I said, there are 4 different types of henchmen. You have beasts on the far left, followed by criminals, scientists, and mystics. And these cards are important. The way this works is that in every recruitment phase or every attraction phase, there are 2 of each type of henchman that is available to be recruited. That simply means we look at the first card, we look at the beast. So we look at the top card on the beast deck, and we see his cost. So he's a beast, which is indicated by this icon, and the number 2 indicates his cost. So to determine who recruits this beast, we look at the beast recruitment track, and whichever player's meter is furthest up the attraction, they get to recruit this beast. So in this case, the yellow player is the furthest along, so they get the first crack at recruiting this person. If they can do it, they must. So they're going to pay the cost, which is 2. They're going to tick their marker down 2. And they're going to take this henchman, they're going to add it to their hand of henchmen, essentially. So that gets placed in their play area. And then the next beast card is going to get turned face up. The next beast card here, Amok. He's a beast who costs 4. And we'll talk about what these icons mean on the side here in a bit. But we look back at the beast track, and now our green player up here is now first. So the green player gets the crack at this beast, paying 4. So we tick the green players down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the green player has now recruited Amok to their henchman pool. We do the same thing for the criminals, the scientists, and the mystics, ticking the tracks down accordingly, and giving first shot at all of those beasts. Once we have done the attraction phase, and again, up to 2 of each henchman type get recruited. So we notice we don't turn up a third beast quite yet. If there is a situation where whoever's next in line, so let's say this was the situation for our mystics where our green player was on spot number 4. If our top mystic happened to cost 5, because there are henchmen that cost that much, our green player only has 4, so he or she cannot recruit the mystic player or the mystic henchman that costs 5. No more mystic henchmen are recruited. That card simply stays face up for the next round. And these attraction scores do carry over to the next round as well. So if you don't recruit anything, it's fine. You'll be okay because you'll have the ability to recruit in future rounds. The next thing we do, the next phase we move into is the contract phase. The board gets seeded based on which round you're in. The board gets seeded with the number of contracts, either easy, hard, or there are some contracts that are labeled with legendary difficulty. These cards give you information on the back of the card. You can see the difficulty level, so that we're looking at an easy contract. This one focuses on intelligence, requires 1 henchman be sent there. And on each contract, what's going to happen during the contract phase, the players are going to take their player order markers and they're going to stack them onto the time track in their player order. You're then going to spend time to travel. So let's say the yellow player is Empress Ishi and she wants to accomplish this Africa goal here. She's going to look on her card for Africa, which is here, and it costs her 5 time, or essentially 5 weeks, to accomplish this goal. So we simply take her time marker, we move it 5 spaces on the time track, and then we flip over. She needs to assign henchmen. So in this case, she probably wants to assign some henchmen who focus on intelligence. And that's what these symbols on the side of the cards are. There are 4 different traits. You have blue, which is intelligence. You have the red that we saw with Amok. Red is brawn. The green stands for intelligence. And we have one of those up here with gray matter. You'll see his intelligence score here in green with 5. And then the last place there, the yellow marker, is mystic. And these are the different traits. They basically determine how many dice you get to roll during the contract phase. So Empress Ishi goes up to do the contract. She assigns one of her henchmen, focusing on intelligence. We flip this over, and it says that she's trying to synthesize a mind control drug. She's trying to target, her target of number of successes is 2. And so she's going to roll dice. Now, her henchmen are going to tell her how many dice she gets to roll. So let's say she's the one that had picked up Mr. Moist here, our beast character. She rolls 2 stealth dice, which means she's going to roll 2 of these blue die. Now, the important thing with these dice is every fist symbol is considered a success, and there are 1, 2, sometimes 3 successes on die sides. There's a lot of blank sides as well. And each color has its own symbol. So the blue symbol has this mask that stands for stealth. If she were attempting a contract that has the blue stealth symbol as the preferred method, each one of these blue die faces that has the mask on it counts as 2 successes. This, however, unfortunately for her, is not the contract she went after. She went after one that wants intelligence. So if she rolls any of the blue mask symbols, they're not going to count for anything. So she's simply looking for 2 successes. So she rolls the dice. She gets 2 fists, so those are 2 successes, so she succeeds. So she reads the flavor text for her success. So the scientists create a drug that turns people into helpless sheep. You call it television. So a little bit of humor here. She scores 3 points. She makes $3. And this symbol means that she gets to draw a scheme card. Scheme cards are things that can be used to either negatively affect other players or positively affect yourself. And you score 2 infamy points for interfering with your other plans because you're being evil and vile. So you score some extra points for that. There are some other symbols on here. This power symbol here, if she had failed, she would have scored no points. Still would have gained $1, and one of her henchmen would have gained a superpower. And that simply means you draw a power card off the power deck, and this gets assigned to one of your villains. And now this particular villain would gain super speed, and they would roll 3 extra blue dice in addition to any other dice that their card provides. Once she has done this contract, whether she succeeds or fails, it gets discarded. It gets replaced, but with a contract of the same difficulty. So we'd put another easy contract out. And then we move to the player who is next in line on the time track, furthest to the left. In this case, blue and green are stacked on top of each other. Green would go next. So green could attempt to do a contract. During this phase, you can also activate any rooms. So in this case, this is an action room. I can spend 1 time to activate the ability on this room. There are also contract rooms that don't cost any time that allow me to re-roll dice, add dice to my dice pool, various things that can happen. I also have the ability to visit these 3 special locations at the bottom of the board. Each location costs me 2 time. So if I were to do that as the green player, I would spend 2 time. And I could either visit the underground, which allows me to draw a scheme card, which we talked about. I could go to the Hoodlum Hospital. That allows me to pay $2 to remove an injury from any henchman. And I can do this for the 2 time. I could pay $4 and remove 2 injuries if I've got 2 injured henchmen. Or I could visit Lucifer's Lounge, which allows me to draw a mercenary card. These mercenaries vary in the stats that they give. So they give this particular one gives brawn. If I draw another one, so there's one that gives intelligence. They all give different stats to them. And they act as henchmen that I can send out on my various contracts that I'm trying to complete. They give me, obviously certain dice. What's important about mercenaries is during the cleanup phase, when I pay my henchmen, you have to pay $1 for every henchman that you have. After I pay my mercenaries, they don't come back. They go back to the bottom of the mercenary deck. They were hired for a job, they did their job, and they leave. So those are my options as far as visiting these common areas. Now that green has taken his turn, it's now blue's turn. They do something that causes them to move, so maybe they do something that costs 3 time. And it continues until someone runs out of time. So let's say the blue player or the green player takes another move. The blue player just decides to pass. When you pass, you move your marker to the furthest left spot on the player order track. The other 2 players would continue taking until all players have either passed or done things that have caused them to run out of time. At that point, we enter the cleanup phase. During cleanup, you're going to refresh any henchmen that you have assigned and sent on contracts, because they do become exhausted, so they can't be used again. They get placed face down after they're assigned. They get flipped back over. You pay $1 for every henchman that you have, so that's your henchmen, your lackeys, any mercenaries that you have. By rule, you have to pay your mercenaries first. Any henchmen you could not pay, you could not afford to keep, leave the game forever. They're just discarded from the game. You don't have the opportunity to hire them back or use them again later. You then will refresh your hero by flipping not your hero, but your henchman. You'll flip them back over. You do have the option of firing henchmen. If you would like to get rid of some, you can dump them all. You can discard a henchman out and remove them from the game as well, so you don't have to pay them next round. Maybe they're not giving you stats that you're looking for, those types of things. We move the round marker down to round 2, and we begin again with the base building phase for round 2, where we build up our bases, gaining the attraction scores. We recruit villains. We would also flip over any cards that are face down. We flip up. So in this example, the beast would be flipped back up, so it'd be face up. So you could see what the next ones in line were that help you plan for the base building phase. We then would recruit henchmen. We do the contract phase again with the time track. You'll notice rounds 2 and 3 have more time in them. At the end of round 3, you won't do any of the refresh steps, so you won't pay your henchmen, you won't refresh henchmen, you will simply gain any end-game infamy points that you would gain. And whoever has, there's a bonus you get if you have the most money, you get 15 points, second place gets 10, and it scales from there. After people have obtained their bonus infamy, whoever has the most infamy is the winner of the game. So that is Infamous. First and foremost, I have to say I'm a giant comic book fan. I've been a fan of Rob Guillory's artwork for years. I love especially the comic series Chew, published by Image Comics, that Rob did the art for that. He's done art for all kinds of books. I love his art style. It's very, it's got a very unique style to it. When I see it, I immediately know it's his. So when I saw pictures floating around social media of a board game with his art, I wanted to check it out. I wanted to get a feel for it. I wanted to play it. I wanted to see how his art incorporated. And then I heard it was a game where you're supervillains and you're trying to basically become the most evil supervillain that you can. And I was hooked because it had that comic book theme, but flipped it on its head. I'm not the heroes fighting the villains. I'm the villain. So how does the game itself play? It's actually way more rules light than I expected it to be. When I opened the box up and I saw, wooden discs and lots of cards and lots of, bigger cards and I saw all these different spaces on the board, and there were, multiple decks of cards, in fact, I was a little concerned about, is this going to be complicated? Is it going to be tough to learn? Is it going to be tough to play? And it's absolutely not. It's very rules light. There's light card drafting in that base building. I'm a sucker for card drafting, so the fact that this game includes some of that, I really enjoy. So you're doing the card drafting bit, which is having you climb that attraction track as you're just doing the card drafting. Now, obviously, you're paying attention to it because maybe you're looking at the contracts that are on the board. If you're playing with the finales, okay, I've got I need to have 2 beasts and I need to have completed 2 brawn contracts by the end of the game. There's some brawn contracts on the board. I know obviously I want the beasts because they generally give you brawn, but I need them for my finale anyway. So I'm looking at the rooms that I have available to draft and trying to find the ones that are letting me climb up the beast track. But, not only so that I get to be in front and get to choose first beast, but also that I'm high enough that I can afford that first beast, because that first one costs 4 or 5. I may be on, in the lead on the track and only have a 3. No one gets to recruit any beasts that round. So, there's some strategy in terms of which tracks do I want to climb. Obviously I don't know what my opponent's finales are, but if I can kind of see that they've been building a team, maybe the first couple of rounds they've been focusing pretty heavily on the criminal or the scientist tracks, maybe I want to do something to climb up those tracks myself and block them from getting those particular henchman types. And if I can get to the point where I'm first on that track, but I don't have the funds or the attraction score to recruit that particular type of villain, it's even better, because maybe I didn't want that henchman anyway, but I just want to stop other people from getting it. So there's definitely some choices to be made there. I really enjoy that aspect of it. Having decisions to make as far as contracts, and which ones do I go for? This one here is an easy. Generally means the points are the points and the money that I get for succeeding on those are lower generally. They generally require less henchmen to send, so now maybe I've got extra henchmen that I can send on other contracts, so maybe I can knock out a couple of contracts in a single round and not spend time activating my own secret base rooms, or spend time hitting those 3 special locations to grab mercenaries and such. Which mercenaries, I have to say, the first couple times I played, I really undervalued the mercenaries and how important they can be. Yes, it's a random draw. They generally give you 3 dice of some type, and it's a random draw as far as what type of dice you're getting when you take that mercenary card. But they can be helpful, not only for giving you more dice. You can get a lucky draw, so maybe I needed a brawn contract and none of my particular henchmen gave me brawn, or maybe they only gave me 1 brawn die. So I flip up a henchman, hey look, I got 3 more brawn dice, this is great, I've got a better shot at beating this brawn contract. But what's nice about the mercenaries, not only do they give you that bonus, but they may give you the required number of henchmen to even attempt the contract in the first place, because some of those contracts require that you send at least 2 henchmen, before you can start rolling dice. So it's important to make use of those henchmen. The scheme cards are great. They add a little element of kind of take that to the game. I wouldn't really call it straight take that though, because it's more a, I play this scheme card against my opponent, and if they succeed in their contract, I steal 3 of the dollars from their winning. So if they won 6, I get 3 of it, they keep 3 of it. There may be things where I play it to, there's nothing really truly nasty in there. It's giving me a couple of points, and I have the possibility of gaining something. Using the temptation to use those against my opponent is great, because it's great to grab the 2 extra points, and I may get some kind of benefit. If nothing else, I'm making it harder for them to succeed on the contract by upping the value they need or something along those lines. But on the flip side of those scheme cards, there are things that I can play to negate things for myself. So if I draw a symbol that means one of my henchmen gets injured, now I've got to spend the extra $2 and the 2 time to repair that henchman or heal that henchman before I can use them on a contract. Maybe I want to play one of my scheme cards that voids that injury or voids a capture. There are captured indicators that would take those henchmen away. If my henchmen get captured during one of my contract attempts, they go away. I don't have access to them anymore. So they're planning for that as well. I really enjoy the way the game scales. I like the variant of adding the heroes in the 2 and even the 3 player game. Having those heroes and just kind of one more obstacle that's in my way as I'm trying to, climb the ranks of uber villainy. And it's a lot of fun to, get out there and you have these triumphant moments of I'm going for this contract and I'm chucking a bunch of dice. I mean, we've had times where we've rolled 8, 9, 10, 12 dice, and you have that triumphant moment of, I needed, 11, a success of 11 in order to pass this, and I hit 11 exactly with my die roll. Those kinds of moments. There's plenty of dice mitigation because the secret rooms, I didn't show them a lot in the video, the brief overview, but the secret rooms do give you the ability to, the contract rooms you can activate during your contract phase. If it says contract on the room, it's generally a 0 time cost for it, so you can activate it after you failed a contract. It lets you do something. You can activate it before you roll those trait dice and add dice of a certain trait to it. You can activate rooms that let you re-roll dice. There are rooms that let you swap the traits on your henchmen. So maybe I've got one who rolls 5 mystic dice and I've got one that rolls 1 brawn, and I really need more brawn, so now I activate this room, so now I'm rolling 5 brawn and only 1 mystic. So there's all kinds of little ways that you can tweak the die roll so it's not just a straight luck. You still do have luck of the roll, and that may turn some people off. For me, I don't mind it because, if you're going into this, it doesn't matter how well I've laid my plans, there are always unknown factors. Just from a thematic standpoint, there are always unknown factors that could derail those plans. Heroes show up, there are civilians there that I wasn't counting on being there, there are, police officers. I mean, just from a thematic standpoint, it makes sense that I may not succeed no matter how well I've planned this particular contract, this particular scheme of mine. Overall, I would definitely give this game, a huge recommendation. I had a blast with it. We've had a lot of laughs, in there. There's definitely some humor in the contract cards as well as some of the flavor text on the henchmen themselves. It's a lot of fun. Definitely check this out, especially if you're into superheroes, if you're into, being on the other side of the superheroes, if you like the villainy idea. Things like card drafting and die rolling. There's a little bit of hand management with the henchmen that you have. Those kinds of things really bring me into it, really put this into my wheelhouse. Definitely check this one out. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer those as best as I can. There's a link to the Kickstarter in the description of this video, so if you're watching this on YouTube and not on the Kickstarter page, you can click over to the Kickstarter and take a look at some other videos, some more information about the game. And until next time, keep gaming, friends.